I think one initiative which has been very something that's been my own favorite thing throughout my multifaceted journey was storytelling. Yeah, how do you put that in a personal setting, and how do you put that in a corporate setting?
Hello and welcome to FaceTime with Leaders, brought to you by Directors Institute, World Council of Directors. Today, we are thrilled to have with us a true innovator and strategic leader, Ms. Aparna Ram. With over 20 years of experience driving change and innovation across industries, Ms. Aparna has worked in multifaceted roles at several leading IT services and consulting MNCs in India. From ideating cutting edge solutions to successfully managing high impact initiatives, her journey reflects creativity, strategic leadership, and a commitment to driving sustainable growth. She is not just a leader, she is a change maker. Ms. Aparna has been instrumental in building innovative communities, mentoring future leaders, and delivering significant cost savings and performance improvements through agile innovation processes. With expertise in managing large scale transformation projects, she has a keen eye for spotting opportunities and leading teams through complex challenges. In today's conversation, we will dive into her journey, the secrets behind driving innovation at scale, and the power of collaborating in today's fast paced business world. So, without further ado, let's welcome Ms. Aparna Ram. Welcome to FaceTime with Leaders.
Thank you, Mr. Sunny. That was a very big and good introduction. I hope I'm very proud of hearing all of this after a long time, but then I'm also getting a bit jittery in terms of what we have done so far, right? When you hear it from somebody else. Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity.
Looking forward to a great conversation ahead. So, Ms. Aparna, you have had such a fascinating career, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear more from you. But before we dive into the specifics of your impressive work, let's rewind a bit. If you could think of one early moment or experience that really made you think, this is where I'm meant to be, what would that moment be? Or was there an unexpected twist in your journey that set the course for everything you have achieved so far? We would love to hear how it all began.
Um, that's a very very interesting question, and I hope I'm able to do justice for the time that we have got today, because it's going to be a bit of a emotional question as well. Um, the one particular point in time where I felt that this is really the cusp of my life that's going to change my life was when I got admitted into my MBA program, which was fairly recent, like on 2019, and it 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 was a very very difficult. And when I say difficult, it's not that it was difficult in the sense of getting into the B school or getting into things, because we were at a stage where we have personal commitments, professional commitments, and this was a thing that was getting added on to the current list of commitments. And then we had to juggle between multiple roles and responsibilities. What we have right now, we have to adjust time, we have to create time. And then eventually things fell in place, and I was able to do this program very successfully. But the real change happened when the school formed our cohort. So we at some point, when your journey starts off with a lot of ups and downs, right? There's always this thing that hits you very hard, the imposter syndrome that people will call. But when we had the cohort done, and when I went to UK in person to do some amount of the initial modules, that's when I realized that the journey, I'm not the only one having a similar journey. So if I may recall, our cohort had single parent, our cohort had people who were taking care of their kids, single father, single mother, different realms of personal and professional commitments, C-level leaders, entry-level students who are fairly mid-managerial, and also people who are doing entrepreneurial kind of activity, diners, legal assistants, people in different areas of work, right? And when we all met each other, that's when I realized that I was not alone, and everybody had their own bit of turmoil, both in terms of professional and personal life, and they were trying to do their bit. But what inspired me from that entire team was that everybody collectively, we were slow starters in our own sense. In the sense that It is not like you do an undergraduation or you do a post-graduation where your life is pretty carefree and you can devote your entire time into the role that you've taken or the immediate commitment that you've taken. But what was truly inspiring was their resilience, the ability to pause when needed and the ability to continue after the pause. So the determination of not to stop and the determination to keep continuing. So sometimes we as a cohort, we just read one line in a page because somebody was not keeping good and somebody was not in the emotional state to read through that entire assignment. And sometimes we would do 10 pages at a go. So that kind of adjustment as to how and most of us were in our late 30s with one kid or two kids or so many kids and playing different roles and we were trying to sometimes it would be so difficult for us that we would not even get into the space of understanding the module, because you need to clear up your mind to get into what you're trying to ingest. That itself was sometimes very difficult, but regardless, we all put in our effort and we made sure we never stop. We continue with the journey. Sometimes we would leap, sometimes we would crawl, but the journey never stopped. And that kind of gave me the resilience and the determination to keep pushing forward.
Absolutely, absolutely, Ms. Aparna. And it's amazing how such a defining moment shaped your leadership style. You have clearly turned challenges into opportunities for growth. All right. So, continuing our conversation, you have successfully implemented several initiatives that have become an integral part of the business routine, which is obviously a remarkable accomplishment. So, could you share one initiative that stands out to you personally? Something that had a significant impact, either surprising you with its success or transforming the team or organization. And part B of my question is, looking ahead, is there any initiative you are excited about introducing in the future that could make a similar or even greater impact?
I think one initiative which has been very something that's been personally my own favorite thing throughout my multifaceted journey was storytelling. Yeah. How do you put that in a personal setting and how do you put that in a corporate setting? And corporate storytelling was something that I was truly fascinated by when I got introduced to that. We've all grown up hearing Cinderellas and Sleeping Beauties and Frog and the Prince and Rumpelstiltskin and all that. But when we use the same style to convey the business benefits or an idea that is supposed to be implemented or an idea that is implemented and people are realizing benefits, you sort of introduce characters, you sort of introduce emotions, situations, and then there's the happy ever after, and then you introduce, okay, what is in it, what did we achieve at the end of all of this, and then we say, okay, so much is the dollar savings and so much is the revenue that we got, right? That sort of what I have truly observed is that it stays in leaders' mind, because day in and day out, we go through a lot of presentations, business case studies, and there's a lot of numbers and data points and facts that is there in our mind, right? What is easy for us to recollect and what is easy for us to always use as a conversation starter is a story. So did you hear that team had done that? And did you listen? This innovation, there was so much of pain when we implemented this idea. The team had to stay for so long, but then they did not give up. So when we combine all these elements and bring kind of a Lapata Ladies or a notepad or a sci-fi movie, whatever you want to call, right? Tom Cruise kind of a movie or whatever that you want to bring in, it stays in mind. And what I've observed is stays in mind forever. It doesn't forget. And that kind of the other reason what I would also call is it's each character has their own role to play. Somebody is good, somebody is bad, then there is a plot twist in the story, and at the end of the day, you address the situation being the bad person in here most likely, and then you sort of look at it in not more than 5 to 7 minutes. That's the time frame. And it's easy to sort of give an elevator pitch when you're also looking to model something like a Shark Tank kind of a thing in a corporate setting, right? And then eventually you sort of look at how many customers you've touched, how many what's the process optimization you've made, what is the new customer segment you've onboarded. So it's easy for people to relate very quickly.
Absolutely, absolutely. And how incredible it is, that a single idea can evolve into something so impactful for both the organization and for you personally.
Yes. So I look forward for hearing a lot of stories. Maybe on a lighter note, even gossips, like, the team is working on some good idea. There's an AI idea that a team is working on. Have you heard that? That sort of gives you a peer competition. Then they, okay, let me also pick up AI idea, artificial intelligence, what's next and all that, right? So we use it in multiple settings. Yes.
Amazing. So, moving ahead in your role, you are constantly navigating the complexities of change management, and I imagine in industries where transformation can sometimes feel overwhelming, it must be a delicate balance. So, I'm curious, how do you go about ensuring that the strategic goals of an organization are translated into tangible, actionable steps that teams can embrace? And what's been your approach to making sure those changes not only stick but truly drive a meaningful impact?
A very deep question again. But broadly, what we can look at is, in general, if we have to relate this to another example of having, we've all learned Venn diagrams, right? So let's assume there are two Venn diagrams. People who are primarily tasked, I'm not saying this is the only task, but then people who are primarily tasked with running the business. And there is another set who are primarily tasked with growing the business. And there's always going to be an interlap because running and growing the business cannot exist in silos, right? So whenever there's a strategic goal that is being defined, we look at it from different stakeholders. And there's always this responsibility on leaders to make sure that there is collective consensus on the different stakeholders that we look at. What is in it for them? How can their team be successful? When you are running the business and this is a strategic goal that we are looking at, how can this team be successful? How can business growth be successful? And how can we marry both of them so that it draws into a collective consensus, and we define cadence, we define KPIs, we define metrics, and we identify people who can run the show in such a way that there is, like I said, one, collective consensus. Two, we at some point we'll have to let go of individual team level aspirations, make adjustments between individual team level aspirations, and then look at how we can pivot or we can adjust so that the broader organization objective or the broader strategic objective is being achieved. At the end of the day, all of us have to make some trade-off, whether it is going to be running the business or growing the business. When I say trade-off, it's not like in the terms of, it's more in the terms of like, how do we realign the team? Like, say, for example, if I'm primarily focused on running the business and you have a team of 30 that you need to handle. So how do we realign ourselves so that we are able to create additional capacity? Right, today there is the team is working on certain activities and this is the capacity that is needed. How do we leverage some of these initiatives, technology solutions that we have so that we are able to create additional capacity for us to realign to the goal? It could be training, it could be training, career counseling, it could be most likely what we see in terms of artificial intelligence today, right? How do we rebadge ourselves? How do we relook at what we have been doing so far? And the same thing applies to the other business growth team as well. What have been doing all along? How does this impact our current tasks that we have been doing? How do we realign ourselves? So when we look at ourselves as a team and do adjustments and realign ourselves to the broader objective, I think it is fairly easy for us to look at breaking down the entire goal into, okay, what is my milestone 1? What is my milestone 2? What is my milestone 3? And who are the primary people who would be contributing for milestone 1? For example, if milestone 1 is going to be like, let's say, for example, we need the people from run the business group to complete some competency management related courses, upskilling themselves or cross-skilling themselves, then that is going to be a decision that we will have to make, whether we are going to train the existing workforce or are we going to hire new talent from the market. So how do we do a trade-off between these two? And then there is always going to be a cultural issue that comes into picture when we are looking at hiring a completely new team and forming a completely new team, which is going to be from the market, right? So how do we balance the cultural issues? How do we balance the alignment issues? How do we balance people issues? How do we balance management related issues? So I think it is important for all of us to be transparent, for all of us to be accountable, and for all of us to act towards the broader goal so that we move as a team. And it more importantly, it is also imperative that we celebrate success collectively, because that is where, and we don't neglect even the smallest contribution that has come from. Yeah, because when we look at celebrating success, usually there's this tendency that we look at big players, or hierarchy defines, or maybe people who have been big contributors get identified a lot. But there are people who, there are activities that is going to be there are activities that is going to be very small, very trivial, but that is really important for us to move from the current situation to the next situation, right? The current position to the next position. So we don't neglect even the tiniest contribution, even the tiniest task, and we celebrate as a team. And how do we celebrate others so that they are able to appreciate what is the, what we were as a team, and the transition from the team from yesterday to today, and what we look towards in the future, right?
Rightly said, Ms. Aparna, and that's such an insightful approach, actually. Talking about innovation, Ms. Aparna, it is rapidly transforming industries. But as we embrace these cutting edge technologies, how do we ensure people remain at the heart of this change? You know, that's part A of my question. And once you answer this, I will move forward to the part B.
Okay. See, all along, one thing that I was very particular about, or if you look at my responses as well to the past questions, right, we looked at corporate storytelling, which had a lot of emphasis on the people component. Yeah. The second question, if you look at how do we drive collective stakeholder consensus, how do we identify the stakeholder, and how do we have a collective stakeholder consensus? Yeah. So the response to this question is also going to be in line with that, right? And my personal favorite framework that I've been using in all of these things, especially into the question that you've asked right now, is design thinking approach, right? So thinking is not linear. Let's all accept the fact there's no one entry and one exit, and it's not straightforward. Yeah. So we need to understand and appreciate the fact that thinking has to be in circles, in loops, so that we are able to understand the consequences of what decisions that we make, the consequences of who we invite, and how do we collaborate with each other, and what is in it for the entire team that is going to be partaking in this program, or how do we empower employees and all that. But having said that, I would always want to, what I do as a practice is I basically look at iterative approach. Yeah, how do we iterate? Is that the right problem? Can we talk to people to understand, are we looking at the right opportunities? Are we looking at the right challenges? So who are the, what is the, so, okay, going back again to a corporate jargon, like typically there's this bell curve that everybody uses, right? So I use my bell curve more often on a design thinking setting. So what is this mask that we're looking at, which is going to be the conventional mask? Yeah, and who are the outliers? And who are the outliers in the sense that who are not going to support or adopt, people who are going to be very minimal, but then who are going to be very critical for us to embrace this. Yeah. So when you look at both the opportunity and the challenge in terms of iterative fashion, and when you look at ethnography as a tool, or when you look at interview as a tool, when you look at surveys as a tool, right? My personal choice, I don't go with surveys, because most often what happens is there is a tendency to just sort of go with some of the easily known responses that's available when we go for surveys. So though we use surveys a lot, the tendency to rely on survey has been very minimal of late, unlike the COVID situation now that we are seeing everybody in the office. So we do sort of have conversations, really quick, candid conversations, that is going to help us understand, okay, is that a problem? Is that an opportunity? Are we looking at the ripple effect? Yeah. The same goes with the solutions. Okay, now we know what is the problem. Now we have an understanding on the problem. And I'm sure this is the 70% of this particular box is in the problem. So your problem will have, again, various elements in the ecosystem, right? When you look at it in a universal setting. So what is the one that is contributing for the maximum, let's say more than 60, 70%? And how do I address that? How do I mechanize that? How do I solutionize that. So when we keep going in circles like this, when we keep going in iterative manner like this, there's no one right approach. Let's all accept that. There's no one right approach and there's nothing wrong. It's okay to fail. Yeah, it's okay to fail. And there's no one right approach and there's nothing to wrong. And I am, and personally for me, both in my personal life and in my professional setting, I think it is important for us to accept the fact that it's okay to fail, more also in a corporate setting. And we've dealt with it in different manners. Yeah, we've all been dealing with it in different settings and in different manners. So we do have to give that psychological safety that yes, if we fail in not identifying the right thing, that's fine. Because it is any which case going to emerge, because this is going to be an iterative cycle. And then when we have a fairly decent solution identified, we go to the prototyping part of it. And that's where we need to be quick to prototype. We need to be quick to test our hypothesis and then look at who will be helping to scale our hypothesis. Yeah. Put that in one setting, put that for one team, put that for one customer, put that for who is going to be my second customer, third customer. How do I validate with different customers? How do I validate with different teams? How do I scale the solution so that I'm sure that this hypothesis is going to work, and then you make it a scalable solution. So for me, across the board, design thinking has been one of the key, most reliable framework that I've been following, because it helps me to understand at any point in time, even when I have a prototype ready or a mental model of how to apply a solution ready in a certain aspect of what we are looking at, right? I can still go and talk to my stakeholders to understand, okay, this is the prototype, this is what I understood from you, and this is how the prototype will help in terms of looking at a initial pivot or a minimal viable product that we can test the hypothesis with. Are you okay to get this prototype ready? Then we again review the prototype, we do changes in the prototype, and then say, okay, then the most important factor that comes in is what is success. Yeah, because there are different teams that's getting involved. So what is success for me need not be the success for somebody else. So how do we define success? So what is success for me? What is success for you? And how do we measure success? How do we have indicators that is going to say, yes, we have succeeded? Yeah, sometimes in certain cases, getting the team to say, okay, yes, let's move ahead itself has been a success for us. And sometimes it has been so easy that we are able to deploy the solution right away to the customer and then say, yes, we've been successful in getting one customer. So it is really important for us to understand success, and it doesn't have to be, again, a very big leap. It can be the tiny step that is going to take us forward from this position to this position. It can be as small as this, right? Or it can be as big as this. How does success mean? What is success? And then going back to the same thing. And when we look at success, the other important factor is how do we reflect? We've been successful in one setting, we've been successful in one customer, we've been successful in one scenario. But is that all that we need to look at? How do we scale these solutions? And the classic examples are the Amazons of the world, the Swiggies of the world, and the Zomatos of the world, right? They started in a different scale, and they are in a different scale today, which means they have been able to align themselves with the market demands, align themselves with the market need, and somewhere there is a what do you call internal reflection that is also happening, in the sense that, okay, we have now reached to market saturation. What more can we do? We've got first 5 customers. Now what more do we need to do? Because every customer is going to be different, every team is going to be different, and every stakeholder is going to be different. So it is important for us to sometimes make a trade-off, in the sense that, okay, we have got a team that has been fairly successful for first 5 customers. A radical situation comes in, and some kind of, you see that there's a complacency that creeps in the team, right? Because we've been fairly successful and we know the template, we know the prototype, we know what are the steps that we need to follow, but you are very sure that this is not the case with the other customer. So you may want to rejig the team. You may want to look at how do we shuffle the team to bring in more fresh perspectives or fresh thought without hurting anybody's ego. So the team also grows, the customer segment, the customer base also grows, the solution also grows. It's not a straightforward answer. I've been trying to look at what is a straightforward answer that I can give you, but I know I'm not giving you a straightforward answer because there's no one straightforward answer to this. Yeah, so what I've been highlighting here is some of the key things that we need to be mindful of. Yeah, so that we know when we navigate through the corporate labyrinth, we know how do we have to navigate, keeping in mind the broader goal, keeping in mind the organization goals, keeping in mind the individual team aspiration goals as well, right? For example, when we say a team, it's made up of 5 or 10 different people. They will have their own aspirations. So we will have to be able to convince them to say, okay, your aspiration will also be met and the organization's aspirations will also be met. But your aspiration will not be met right now. But if we meet the organization's aspirations in terms of achieving these goals, probably it will propel in a career growth or career acceleration. Eventually, we will get you to a state where your aspirations will be met in some form or shape, but we will be able to support you in whatever shape or manner that we can, if wherever possible.
All right. So moving on to the next question. Ms. Aparna, looking ahead, what are some of the aspirations you have for your own future? Are there any specific goals or challenges you are excited to tackle next? Also, given your extensive background in innovation and leadership, do you see yourself taking on a more prominent role in the boardroom in the future?
Yeah. There are two parts to this question. I always have my bucket list full. It doesn't go empty at all. Okay. And yes, my bucket list is full. I have a lot of to-dos to accomplish. And I am also keen in terms of taking up new challenges that come my way so that I am able to grow as a person and maintaining the integrity, moral compass, transparency, and accountability, and all that, right? Because as we mature as human beings, I wouldn't say as we grow as leaders, as we mature as human beings, we should be able to make sure that we are adhere to the key principles that shaped our life so far. We are all shaped with our past experiences, and the values that we hold very dear to our life is going to be dependent on the experiences that shaped our life so far as to where we stand today, right? So in that sense, for me, it is very important that it is integrity, transparency, honesty, accountability. I would rather be willing to hear a slapping truth than a sugar-coated lie. Yeah. So how do we mature ourselves as human beings? How do we embrace the next challenges? And like I've been answering all the other questions that you've asked me so far, right? It's okay to take it slow. It's okay to delay something rather than take something in a hurry and then quit halfway through. Quitting has never been a choice for me. Quitting has never been an option for me. I've always been a bit slow. So that I make sure that I am able to juggle between all of my commitments, and this is whatever we add is going to be +1, which means every time we take in a new challenge, every time we take in a new aspiration that we want to achieve, right? We are not going to let go of the current ones that we already have, because we need to keep refining ourselves in the current ones also. So it's always going to be a +1. So I've always been a slow decision maker. I've always been very, very slow in terms of my progress also. But the one thing that I'm very particular about is I make sure that we complete what we have taken. We achieve what we have taken, and quitting is not an option. So for me, there are a lot of aspirations. I would like to challenge myself. I would like to refine my skills. I would like to look at new opportunities that would help me achieve my aspirations in terms of, okay, how do I refine my skills? It could be communication. It could be left brain thinking, right brain thinking. And on a lighter note, the immediate challenge for me is I've taken violin classes, okay? I've seen my daughter play guitar for a very, very long time. And I've been listening to some eminent speakers, and they've always been telling, or there is always this quote that comes in, right? How do we draw inspiration from sources? How do we keep ourselves very, very positive so that we are able to sustain the energy up until the journey completes? Yeah. So right now I'm taking violin classes, and the most important immediate challenge is I have to memorize 30 songs.
My good wishes are with you.
The best part is every time I memorize one or two songs, I end up creating my own song. Mix and match here and there.
Right,
Because
right,
we've been
right.
so good at
Great.
juggling things, right? So I keep juggling a lot.
But
And
Miss Aparna, yes, please continue.
yeah, and the last thing I want to add is I was always this person who will sit right next to the exit and walk out immediately. And I was pleasantly surprised that my teacher knew my name. And she was like, I had to take a couple of days off in the recent past for completing these exams and all that. And then you're like, why did you not come for a few days? I was so stunned at that point in time. And she's like, don't worry. And that's she's coming from a very, very conventional classical setting, okay? In terms of how she looks at her students, in terms of how she looks at the way they practice and all that. And having known that I am putting myself from a corporate setting into a conventional art setting, where the imperatives of the teacher is going to be discipline and time management and respect for all things around you, in the sense that respect for the living things, respect for the non-living things, respect for the teacher, respect for your peers regardless of their age and all of that, right? So you put yourself in a different setting there. And when she came and told me that, I know you've been practicing for some time, but then you're making good progress, just continue with what you're continuing, you'll be there eventually. So that kind of motivates us in terms of, okay, I'm not going to quit. I was like, okay, let me quit. And she's like, okay, you're not going to quit, don't worry. But you need to do what you need to do. But then she was directly telling me, you need to do what you need to do so that you are able to, if not 30 songs, you're able to memorize at least 5 songs. So I've been fortunate enough to say, even in the case of Directors Institute, right? I've been fortunate enough to get myself surrounded with people who are appreciative of the fact that, yes, we are trying to do something, and not everybody will fit into the conventional template. Not everybody will fit into the conventional progress. And it's okay to sort of, it's okay not to fit into that social conventions also. The reason I'm bringing this up is when I had my examination enrolled with this institute, they put me on to this corporate governance certification exam. And I am coming from a setting where it is all going to be impromptu, in the sense that you don't have a template. There's no one template where you can articulate your idea. There's no one template where you can present your idea. There's no one. We will have guidelines. We will have recommendations. But then suddenly I was introduced into a domain which required me to remember, okay, what is this section dealing with? Section 88 or section 132 or section 145. And rote learning or memorizing or remembering numbers, in the sense, remembering so many numbers. Yeah, that was never my forte at all. And I still remember these messages and conversations that we've been having with Harry Daswani and other teams of Directors Institute, right? And I told them, no, this is not my cup of tea, and I'm not going to do this. It's going to be very, very difficult for me. It has been very difficult for me. And here, I think I was a bit candid enough to tell them this is so boring. And that's when they were kind enough and they were so patient enough to deal with my tantrums, and they were again putting me to the point that, no, this is not for you to quit. Let's look at what are the alternatives that you will have. Then I completed my, and then we got into a discussion which said, okay, what is your strength? Have you been into ESG setting? Do you know what is ESG all about? Environmental sustainability and all that. And then they said, okay, now you have already been in IT for so long, so you will know what is cloud transformation, what is legacy transformation, what is blockchain and all that. Now, why not we take a break? In the sense, it's not going to be a literal break, a break from this particular subject, but then you do what you do where you are able to, which is going to be allowing you to navigate in areas that you are familiar with. Yeah. So then we sort of took a slightly deviated approach, and then I completed my ESG, and then I completed my digital directors program. And when we came back to this corporate governance module, I was still not there. I was actually struggling very badly. And then I told this team, again, the second thing that I am telling you is I'd given up I'd written my mock, and then it's more than 200 days that I halfway came out of my mock. It's like I attempted 15, 20 questions, and then I'm like, okay, this is not happening. I exit the mock, and I told him. The only thing that I was kind enough, or I am blessed or fortunate enough, is that Harry was okay to not close the mock. He said, I told him just leave the mock open. And then somebody from your directors institute heard me out, and then they came from they were talking as to how you've been working so far, what is your style of working and all that. And then they put me to the Sundaresan sir's classes, live lectures. Yeah. And they told me, just trust me. I think you are more into you've been into a hybrid creative kind of an environment where you will not be able to remember the rules and sections and all that. But just listen to Sundaresan sir. And after the first class, I was convinced that this is how I'm going to read corporate governance module, because he brought in a lot of characters, he brought in a lot of stories, he brought in a lot of examples, real life examples, and then he told, okay, had they done this, then this would have not been done. Had they done this, this would have not been done. How do you navigate this in a real life setting? How do you do this in a real life setting? And then that sort of gave me the motivation to sort of say, okay, I am in still the right track. I'm not going to quit, but this is the right track for me. But only thing is, it is going to be difficult, but it is not impossible. And I did I did another complete round of Sundaresan sir's all mod. First time I was in the class, I was just listening to him. And second time I was just hearing the stories again and again and again. And then I was trying to combine those stories with the corporate governance laws that we have. How do we go about becoming taking the different roles that we have in corporate governance? What is corporate governance? How do you deal with it? What are the different elements in corporate governance, different modules in corporate governance, sections in corporate governance, trying to relate them in various stories that he was telling to me, right? Telling to us in the sessions. And I think that kind of made it a little easy for us to sort of get into the module, understand what the module is all about, and convince that this is not all just theory, but this is going to be some guardrails that are going to be provided for people to ensure that the stakeholder interest is being protected. And there are different stakeholders that we are dealing with. It's not just one. Again, multiple stakeholders across various realms of the society, across various realms of the corporate ladder. And how do we protect their interest? How do we protect the business interest, and how do we also ensure that the company is going to be the going concern of the company, right? So when we are able to relate to all of these things, I think I'm exceeding my time. To keep it very short, the aspirations are not very easy to list down. The aspirations are not very easy to achieve, but the immediate aspiration that I would have is to keep myself refining into the subjects that I've learned. Yeah, because when it's very easy for us to remember when we are applying it in our day-to-day job. And the moment we don't apply anything in our day-to-day job, I think it will 6 months max. The Ola 6 months challenge, if you take, right? 6 months, if you are not using anything, I think it will fly off. So, and I'm sure nobody knows what is sine theta plus cos theta. We have not been using we have not been using all that in our day-to-day work, at least in from not from people from mathematical background, at least from people with a different background like mine, right? So for me, the first important aspiration that I have at this point in time is to keep looking at what we have been, keep ruminating on what we have been looking in terms of corporate governance, and explore areas of how that can be integrated into the day-to-day work that we do. It doesn't have to be the entire thing. I don't think I'll have an opportunity to sort of use related party transaction, but that's fine. But I'll be able to make decisions, how I'm able to make decisions independently without bias, making sure that I am adhering to the rules or the guidelines in the spirit as well as in tea. There are certain things in the modules that we have learned that we can definitely put to use. So I'm sort of in a state where I'm trying to, I wouldn't call morph myself, but then reinvent myself for this content that I've learned, or the principles that we have learned, so that we are able to retain them in memory and we are able to put them into practice.
from your response, it's clear that you have a very strong sense of direction for the future. And I can't wait to see how you shape the future of leadership. And let me wish you luck for memorizing those the 30 songs.
I don't know.
All right, great. Since we are talking about corporate governance, so given your extensive experience in leadership and innovation, how do you approach governance within an organization, particularly when it comes to aligning strategic goals with effective risk management and ethical decision making?
Okay. And I'll try and keep this very crisp as possible because we have been talking about this in our responses all along.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the most important factor that we look at from a corporate governance point of view is the strategy. Yeah. How is the strategy shaping up? Whether it is running the business or growing the business, what is my strategy looking like? And my strategy has to include risk management at different levels. Unit level, sub-unit level, project level, enterprise level. And how easily and how quickly are we able to identify reversible and irreversible risks? Yeah. There are some things that can be reversible. Like this video recording, whatever unwanted things, you can reverse them in your editing and you can make whatever you need to make. But there are certain things that is going to be irreversible. Yeah. Like, for example, when you hire, that's where I was talking about cultural affinity and cultural alignment. If we spend so much of hiring talent or hiring fresh talent into an organization is easier said than done, because we have to, there's a lot of effort that is being spent in terms of building ecosystems or tools that is going to help us identify right talent. If we're talking about AI, or if we're talking about even back before AI, we have to go through tons and tons of resume to figure out who's going to be the right fit, then have 2 or 3 rounds of interviews and then onboard them and then do so many other things, which is going to eventually take sometime between 3 to 6 months of time. Not just from one person, one HR team, but then there's going to be a lot of person that's involved in just hiring the right talent. And then comes training them to make them productive. Whether it is going to be a fresher where there's going to be extensive training, and when you hire a lateral, there's going to be some amount of training that is necessary for them to get them work ready into the work that they have been hired for, right? So these such decisions are going to be irreversible. And it's the same goes with the other areas as well. What the most important aspect in corporate governance is going to be, how do we marry creativity and technology, and how capable are we to identify the reversible and irreversible risks, and what are the mitigation plan that we have at point. Reversible risks, yes, we can be I wouldn't say easy with it, or it is okay sometimes depending on the effort that's getting expended in there. But irreversible risks are something that we need to be definitely mindful of, and there has to be an environment where we are having near zero irreversible risks, because that's going to cause a lot of damage to the team's morale, to the objectives that we have laid down, to the timelines that we are looking at, to the goals and objectives that we are looking at from a strategy point of view, and also to our customers. And there's going to be a cascading impact, not just for today, but also for tomorrow and for the future. Yeah. So it is important that we bake in all of these elements in the corporate governance and do review these elements in the quarterly or cadence that's been built, and pivot whenever necessary, because what we did 6 months back may not be relevant today, or may need a pivot to make sure that it is relevant for today and it is relevant for the next 6 months. So having a strategy is equally as important as you pivot through the strategy and you make necessary change adjustments, so that your strategy is living, your strategy is relevant, and your strategy is able to move forward up until you achieve those goals. And on the ethical leadership, right? I think that we've also been talking on that point as well, right? From whatever background that we come from, what are the key elements that are going to define our values that are very close to our heart? Like I said, for me, it is going to be integrity, transparency, accountability, and making sure that there is also making sure that everybody, because the programs that I have been driving is always going to be a collaborative program, a collective program. So it is not going to be an individual success. So we'll have to make sure that stakeholder acceptance is very, very important. Yeah. So from wherever, whatever background that people, the teams come from or the leaders come from, they should be able to define what is ethics for them. What is, there is an ethical concept in terms of what is law. But moral and ethics, I think there's always going to be a little bit of a live to the spirit or live to the T kind of a situation, right? How do we follow them? In what scenarios we follow them? What are the case by case applications that we can do? How do we make it relevant for each and every situation that we look at? So I think the background that we come from, the knowledge that we bring, and our experiences are going to shape a lot in that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that brings us to the last question of the podcast, and here it is. What motivated you to join Directors Institute, and how has the experience been so far?
As you grow in life, as you grow in corporate setting, you get toned or you get tuned. That would be the right word to use. Huh? You get tuned to pick up signals to make sure that it's time to reinvent yourself. The instincts start working. Yeah. For example, it could be a certain situation where your work is getting so mundane and boring, which means that you'll have to look at what is next. It means that you're getting too comfortable in your current work that you do, then it's a signal that you know what you'll have to pick up next. It means that you've just been using one side of your brain, the right side of your brain, which means that you'll have to concentrate on the other side. Yeah. So there are situations in life where you get instincts that no, this is both boring ho raha hai, both regular ho raha hai, both routine, it's become mundane. I'm getting too comfortable with this. I know what I'm dealing with. The greatest hint can be if you are able to, when you talk to different people, and if you are able to predict their question as well as the response before even they voice out, right? Then that's a first hint that you'll have to pick up. Because you've been with them and you know them for so long that you know what they'll ask and you also know their response, which means that you're getting comfortable with the team. And it's time for you to start looking as to how you grow as a person or how you grow the team. Yeah. So I think I've been picking up all these signals to challenge myself. And I think I've been looking into one of the one of the social media posts that came in. And I then enrolled myself into this program, and I was it Havel's introductory thing, right? There was this program with Havel. I think it's Havel. I'm not sure. I don't remember the name.
Havel Mehta. It's Havel Mehta.
Yeah.
Havel.
Yeah. And then I had a conversation with Akash. And I was not quick to decide, but I am thankful to both of them, but they were able to give me that 1 week's time or whatever days time that I wanted to make sure that I am prepared for this. It's somewhere down the line, you know, you are prepared for the next challenge, but you don't want to bite more than what you can chew. And also you don't want to rush into it. Yeah. So that you spend all your initial excitement and energy just into getting into the module or just getting enrolled yourself. So I think I got to know about Directors Institute from all of these social media forums and the posts that we have been looking at and all of that. But it took me a while to convince that this is the next curve that I'm looking at, and this is the next challenge that would help me reinvent myself or look at me from a different perspective. I never knew I could do all of these things before there are certain things that you rediscover within yourself when you take up your aspirations one by one. And I think Directors Institute, like I mentioned, Harry or even our favorite Ghanshyam, right? He was behind me for getting this video done for the last 2.5 years. I told him, no, this is not the right time. This is not the right time. Because for me, it is more important that I get myself acquainted to the role that I'm aspiring for, to the challenges that I'm ready to face, than get a video done. Yeah. So I think it's been a good decision so far, and good perspective of where I stand, what is my talent, and what are the areas I was able to redefine my strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats as Aparna Ram as a person. Yeah, in a corporate world or even in a personal world.
Great, great. And it's so inspiring to hear how the Directors Institute has influenced your leadership journey, Ms. Aparna.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm truly grateful to all of these people that I mentioned, and I'm not able to recollect all of them because it's not just one person that I've been talking to. I've been talking to most of them, and especially when I got enrolled into the first module, right? I told them on the face, yeah, so this is very difficult for me. I can't listen to lectures like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then you give me 3 or 4 pages. It's not very interactive. I want some interactive bits. I want something that is going to quickly test my knowledge or quickly test my thing. And then I told them, why don't you do something like this or something like that? And I'm truly grateful for them because all along they've been telling me that it's not going to be easy. We accept that, but just don't quit. It's going to be difficult, but we will give you the required help that you will want. So I'm sure they're doing this for every other person who's getting enrolled into the program to understand their concerns and to give them the bespoke, tailored support that is required for them to build the confidence to continue going. Yeah, that's more important. And I'm so grateful for this team for doing that.
Great to hear that. And what an amazing conversation we had today, Ms. Aparna. So, from your insights on leadership to your experiences navigating the world of corporate governance, we have truly gotten a glimpse into the mind of a visionary.
I'm fortunate to hear that that I am a visionary.
Really, thank you so much for your time and for sharing such valuable lessons with us. And it's clear that there is so much more to leadership than what meets the eye. It's about building, innovating, and constantly evolving. So, thank you once again for joining in.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, Directors Institute, for helping me where I am today. Yeah, I know I was not easy.
All right. And to our fantastic audience, we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Remember, if you liked what you heard today, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share this episode with your network, and leave us a review.
Sure.
We love hearing from you, and your feedback helps us bring more inspiring leaders straight to your earbuds. Until next time, keep learning, keep evolving, and keep leading with purpose. Take care and stay inspired.
Thank you. Thank you, Directors Institute, and thank you, Sunny. Thank you, Ghanshyam, for making this happen.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining in and sharing your insights and knowledge with us. Thank you.